Hi, I'm Joanna Merson, and I'm career faculty in the Department of Geography, where I'm a cartographic developer in the Infographics Lab.
And I'm Alethea Steingisser. I'm a career faculty in the Department of Geography, and I'm the cartographic project manager in the Infographics Lab. And today we're interviewing Jim Meacham, who's the director of the lab and co-founded the lab in 1988, about his retirement after 34 years. So the Infographics Lab is well regarded as one of the top university cartography labs in the country, and it didn't start out that way. So can you talk a bit about how the lab started?
Yeah, one of my mentors, Bill Loy, who was a professor of geography at the time back in the 1980s, he came and asked me about what would it take to start a new computer cartography lab. I was working up at the Oregon Department of Transportation at that time, and we sketched out what would be the kind of equipment we would need. He was working on a National Department of Education network grant with the university to set up a graphics workstation, and I had been working at ODOT for a couple of years doing computer cartography, which was really early at that time. This was like in the mid-'80s, and so we kind of sketched out a budget, and not a budget, but like this is what we would need to really start a computer cartography lab in the Department of Geography. And he took that sketched out budget, went to back to the university and then talked to Intergraph, one of the mapping corporations at the time, and was able to secure, with the funding, grant funding, and then also a donation from Intergraph, a setup. And he asked me if I would come back and run it, and at the time I did, and that was in the summer of 1988. And he had put in an order for that workstation, and we received it in July. And one of the reasons he wanted to build the capacity of computer cartography in the department was to support faculty like Professor Bartline, who we worked with early on some lake level mapping. And then also we worked with Alec Murphy on political geography mapping in Belgium. But one of the things he wanted to do, he had produced a first edition Atlas of Oregon back in 1976 for the 100th anniversary of the department, and he wanted to have capacity to build a second edition, which I'm holding here, for the 125th anniversary of the university, which we eventually did produce in 2001. So, bringing that kind of computer cartography capacity to the lab, and then also to help with some of our service activity, working with connections with the Oregon Department of Transportation, the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries, and other departments. So we set up the Intergraph workstation. We started building capacity by doing an atlas of Lane County, which was 10% of Oregon. It's about 10% the scope of an atlas. We started working on converting the Oregon State Highway map from manual to digital. And then we also started mapping the campus. And with that, we were able to piece together funding to fund me as a graduate employee, and then also students. And so the goal was to really serve faculty research, which included a new atlas, working with the public service, working with state agencies, and then also providing opportunities for students, because immediately we started having students work on it. So it was a pretty exciting time to start something like that. And I was on leave from ODOT for a period of time while we got this started, and then I continued on and got my master's degree, and I've not left since, and the lab has grown to where it is today, and I'll with that staff, which includes you and many students.
Nice. So Jim, you mentioned the original Intergraph workstations, which I know differ a lot from our, the room full of Dells and a few Macs that we have. What would you say has been the most significant change in the field since you started?
Yeah. I would say there's a couple key things. One is availability of data, mapping data. It's changed radically. When I started out, we had to digitize all the data off of paper maps. When I worked at Oregon Department of Transportation, I had to do it for the first county map that was digital that they did. I worked on that, which was Columbia County. For the state highway map, I had to digitize all the line work, and now, and plus we didn't have internet to move data around, but now we almost have too much information. So the job is sorting through the information, and then also the way we can, one of the biggest changes, of course, is GIS and what we can do with the data to learn about the environment, learn about the kinds of problems that we are trying to solve, whether it be climate, traffic, soil, agriculture, whatever we're studying about people and migration or animal movement. We have so many tools to analyze that, and then for us as cartographers, we really can make I think beautiful maps that are compelling, that really communicate those stories, and we can do that much better, and people are getting that information not just in paper, which I still love paper, but we can get them on our phones, all the maps that are available on the phone or on computers. So it's just been, and the Infographics Lab has really followed that trajectory, and in many times led certain aspects of it, of that evolution of cartography through time over the last 30 years. It's really has been a golden age for digital cartography, and I really feel fortunate to have been part of that.
I think so do we.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys are, you're the future.
Well, so you've had a really illustrious career, publishing many award-winning atlases, and worked with such a diverse group of people, from researchers at the university, people throughout the state of Oregon, and far beyond, as you've mentioned. You've also taught classes and had students working in the lab. And I'm wondering, of all your work and achievements, what do you think is your legacy of your career?
Yeah. I think one of the things I'm probably it's the most rewarding, and the thing I'm probably most proud of is all the students that have gone through the Infographics Lab or taken my classes, and there's been hundreds, and they're out there in the world doing really great things, having rewarding careers themselves, and taking the knowledge they've gained from us and from all the other classes they've taken in geography in the university, and really taking that and doing really important work, whether it be at National Geographic or in media and New York Times or the Washington Post, or down at Esri, which is the largest mapping company in the world, or at Apple. We have one of our former students is one of the key leaders at Apple in the mapping area. So I think that is really exciting. I get choked up thinking about it, and it's so great to reconnect with them at our annual mapping meetings that we get to go to. I think obviously the atlases, we've worked on several atlases, probably as much as we've published more or as many as anywhere else besides anybody else except for maybe National Geographic. I'm really proud of that work too. So, but yeah, and the campus mapping program that we started in 1988 with some digital files that were created from when the campus was flown by CH2M Hill, an engineering firm. I pulled those together in the Intergraph system. They were panels, tiles, and then we began building a campus map, and that evolved to the point now where we have one of the most robust campus GISs that goes down to the room level, a database that is used for all sorts of activity throughout the university, and that became so important to central administration. It became its own unit under Ken Cato, who used to work in the lab, and he's really took that to the next level, and they're doing really amazing things, and people come to the UO to look at that system and it started in the Infographics Lab. So just to help our campus run more efficiently, and then students are all involved in all that work too. So anyway, I think that's something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, this campus as a smart city, the way it's run, it's incredible. It's great to see that legacy, as well as all the students. But within the Infographics Lab, it's been housed in the Department of Geography for its entire 30 years. What would you say are some of the most valuable aspects of being a part of the geography department?
Yeah, I think the working with the faculty has been just amazing. With starting out working with talking about work we did with Bart, Professor Bartline, everything from those early maps of lake level rising to helping on a web application looking at climate analogs. We did that with a former PhD student of his who's up at OSU. Alec Murphy, throughout his career, helping him work on political maps, helping some of his work. Susan Hardwick, who unfortunately is deceased now, but she was a prestigious professor looking at immigration and working with, I worked with her for several years on immigration patterns throughout Oregon, and Dan Gavin on a atlas of the Olympic Peninsula. We started working on that. In fact, that's we hope to I hope that project continues, but really looking at environmental geography. So we pretty much worked with just about every professor at some point in geography, and then also working with faculty members that aren't in geography department. Like we're working on with a history professor, Dan Rosenberg, on a timelines website that's really pretty amazing. We're working with the Just Futures Institute on an atlas of essential work, and you two were taking the lead on that. But one of probably the most coolest projects I got to work on was with an art history professor, Esther Jacobson Tepfer, for probably about 16 years, helping map archaeological sites in the Altai Mountains in Mongolia. And this book is an atlas that kind of captures a lot of that research. And I got to go out into the field for 3 field seasons, and that was really a remarkable experience, using GPS technology and then looking for and documenting petroglyphs and rock monuments throughout that whole northwest region. So working with faculty has been really one of the great joys of my career.
What advice would you give for someone starting out in the field of cartography today?
That's a really great question. I think really try to get a really good basis in geography and really develop that geographic perspective. In terms of geography covers such a broad range from human topics, cultural, physical geography, and then in the technique, or in the geographic information science area, really develop really good skills in programming, and then also in an analysis and quantitative methods. This is a lot to get, but that kind of basis will really set you well. And then you combine that with design skills and thinking about art and color theory and perspective and layout, and you bring all those things together, and you can really understand working with scientists. You can understand how to work with data, and then you can understand how to communicate that and create new innovative ways to communicate and create some really cool maps that will draw people in.
You mentioned going to the Mongolian Altai. Some of your partnerships in this work have taken you as far places as Yellowstone National Park, the Altai, even a stint over in Nepal. Do you have a favorite field or memory working with your research partners?
Yeah, one really notable experience was being on a mule deer capture, working with our colleagues at the University of Wyoming. We were putting GPS collars on mule deer to understand where they moved and migration routes. And so there's a whole process there of going out to capture them with a helicopter, and then they come back to the staging area. And it's really it's a little bit like alien abduction, you know. So I really feel for the animals, and the people that are involved really take great care that the animals aren't harmed, and really respect the deer or the whatever species that they're capturing. But they would bring them back, and we'd keep them calm, and it was really quite an experience to be so close to, you know, the subject matter that you're studying, and then to learn about them, everything, if they're pregnant or not, with ultrasound, and then taking fecal samples, weighing them. And then one of the first times that I did a release, there's like 3 of us there, and I'm kind of leaning down on the deer, and we untie their legs, and then they have a mask, they have a face blinder on, and you pull that off, and this doe is extremely powerful animal, and you could just feel that release, and it just took off, and you felt like I just had this window into wildness that I've never experienced before, and how much we don't know about these animals in a very intimate way. So that is kind of ingrained in my psyche. When I look at those lines on the map and the data we're working with for all those migrations, you know, I think it gives it a deeper meaning to me.
Wow, that sounds really powerful.
Yeah. So you were just talking about this experience and how you're understanding it, and I'm wondering if your career and experience in cartography and data visualization has really helped or changed the lens through which you view the world or your experiences.
You know, as soon as I discovered geography, you know, which was early on in my undergraduate career, I really started seeing the world geographically. Or when I first took my first class, I went, "This is it. It's like, this is such a great way to look at the world and to understand the world." And I don't think that's ever left me. And I think I use it all the time when I'm collaborating with researchers, either like on the Atlas of Yellowstone, where we work with historians and we work with wildlife biologists, or we work with ethnographers. I really bring that perspective. And so, but also I've learned so much from them in those interactions that I feel like I have a deeper understanding when I'm just exploring the world on my own. You know, I've just learned so much from all those fields. You know, physical geography, you know, when you're in the landscape, even though I'm a cartographer, I really start to look for things that aren't really pointed out to me. It's like, well, why is there a slope over at that point? You know, what's going on over there? Or looking at trees, why are these trees different than these trees over here? So yeah, it's changed me, and it's enriched my world.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Well, it looks like you brought 3 atlases with you, and you've told us about 2.
Yeah.
Do you want us to tell us about the 3rd one?
Yeah, this is our latest. It just came out. It's Atlas of Yellowstone, 2nd edition, and Alethea is a co-author on this. And this Andrew Marcus, a geography professor who just retired, is the lead author. And then Justin Minke is a PhD student who helped us on this project, and he's the 5th author on it. And this is to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Yellowstone, which is the first national park in the world. With that theme, we brought lots of topics into the atlas, and this atlas is really, I think, going to be pretty much one of the key publications this year for Yellowstone, for that celebration and for national parks in the world. There's a page pair that in here that we worked with Bill Linthsathian, a PhD student, that's showing the influence of Yellowstone throughout the world and all the national parks throughout the world and marine preservations, it's just really cool to be able to work on that. And we got to go to Yellowstone probably 3 times a year, 2 or 3 times a year for I don't know, 10 plus years. So we really got to know Yellowstone and what a special place it is. And with Andrew, one time we were up on what's called Specimen Ridge. We were hiking, and we had one of those moments where we saw a pack of wolves walking below us, and it turns out we were in this herd. We were almost in the middle of this herd of pronghorn that were sitting down and kind of relaxing, and we kind of had walked up the slope, and all of a sudden we were kind of surrounded by them. And then we noticed that they were looking down on these wolves, and then there was a bison kind of following up the ridge. The bison was watching the wolves, and then you look down and you see elk antlers and then petrified wood, because that's why it's called Specimen Ridge. So it was just one of those magical moments where we just felt like we were experiencing something, and we were all kind of on edge because of that pack of wolves, just like the rest of the animals there were. So having those experiences, you get those if you're lucky and you've been able to spend a lot of time in a place like that, and so to have gotten to know a place like Yellowstone that well is, I just feel so lucky and honored to have been able to do that and meet the people that have dedicated their careers to Yellowstone, like the historians and the biologists and the ethnographers. There's a lot of people that really love Yellowstone, and so to have worked on a publication like this was really a great honor.
Well, you've talked about one of the strengths and really the foundations of geography is its diversity, and looking at how things differ from other places, and that we can really study anything we want, the geographers can. And I think one of the things about cartography is we get to map a lot of different things and work on a lot of different types of projects. So what makes maps special, and why make them?
I think I've thought about like when you think about what a map does. It's I think of it as like the primary way for geographers medium to communicate. It's kind of like you think about like poems. Every word means something. And you're careful and you choose every word. When we're making a map, we choose every feature and every label that we put on, so it really communicates effectively, or it's beautiful, or it's whatever the purpose of that map is. It's very powerful, and every element on that map is a choice, and there's a decision. It's not by chance. And I think it's a lot like writing like an essay or poetry. It's like every word, every line is not there by chance. And I think that's kind of how I think maps that really work well, and it's almost invisible to the person reading the map that much care went into it. They just glean the information from it. If they have to struggle with it, or they notice things about the map that don't make sense, or it irritates them, then the map is not working as well as it can. And so I think maps are really special. They don't have to be super complicated, and it's best if they're not. But if they're well designed, then they just really work well.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're at getting close to the end of our time, and I want to thank you for talking with us. I want to thank you for all your work and your leadership in the Infographics Lab. You've definitely made an impact on me. I've been there half of that time, or close to half of the time you've been working there, and you've been a wonderful mentor to us, and also to all the legacy of the students and projects that you've worked on. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been
Yes.
really wonderful working with you.
You as well.
Yeah.
I'll get one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Joanna. Yeah, no.
All right. Thank
Anyway,
you.
thank you.
You're welcome.